Hey, GenderqueerChat, Joe here. I'm a day late and $1 short. No, I'm just a day late. It's Monday and my day is Sunday, so I'm really sorry. I don't know what the heck happened yesterday. It is a good topic. I didn't want to miss this week. That's why I'd rather do it late than not do it at all. This week's topic was: Are you religious or are your loved ones religious? Does religion play a role, positive or negative, in your relationship with your gender or other people's relationship with your gender? Do you like animals, and what's your idea of a good pet? Yes, I love animals. Good pets totally depends on who you are. I watch Cesar Millan, the dog whisperer, all the time, and I love that show, but I don't think I could ever be a dog owner. I don't have that kind of alpha dog nature that I kind of have it, but it's exhausting. I don't want to be alpha all the time, you know what I mean? Okay, so the religion question, the biggie. I was really surprised to watch everybody's videos this week to find out that several of our contributors are religious or consider themselves to be religious, specifically Christian or Catholic. I was very surprised to hear that. And I know I shouldn't be. It's common in North America. A lot of people are Christian. A lot of people were raised Christian and hold on to the beliefs of their childhood or gain comfort from customs or these are going to drive me crazy. I just know they are. So if you've watched my previous videos, or if you know my personal channel, you will know that I actually have an entire series of videos devoted to my deconversion process. I was raised Catholic, an evangelical fundamentalist version of Catholicism, which by today's standards would be called fundamentalist or dogmatic. But back in the day, like in my mother's era, that was just normal Catholic. If you read the book Angela's Ashes, that's a good example of how I was raised. So all kinds of gendered notions, very, very distinct descriptions of men and women in the Bible and what men or women are good for. We were taught from a very young age that women could not be priests, for example, could not ever bless the communion or whatever because they were not born with a penis. And since Jesus was born with a penis, the only people who could walk in his footsteps had to have been born with a penis too. There were specific rules and regulations as it regarded sex, and specifically marital sex, and specifically what I call non-consensual sex or marital rape. It was explained to us that a good Catholic wife will do her wifely duty, whether she wants to or not. It was explained to us very young. I don't ever even remember the conversation other than I seem to have always known it, that if a man masturbates, a married man masturbates, it's his wife's sin because she didn't put out for him because she's the reason he shouldn't have to masturbate. This kind of shit made me crazy. Now I know a lot of conventional or modern day what I call Sunday Catholics, but a lot of Christians just choose not to believe those parts of the Bible. But in later years, since I've become a full-out atheist, I actually read the Bible a lot. I'm quite fanatical about the reading the Bible from an atheist perspective. And I've learned so much more about it because, incidentally, Catholics don't read the Bible. Catholics are not a Bible-oriented religion. One of my childhood memories was reading some horrible things in the Bible, specifically Old Testament stuff, and my mom and our local priest giving me an earful and telling me not to read it, and that will just confuse me. And that's, whenever I've tried to explain the difference between Christianity and Catholicism, I always say Christianity is all about the belief. You have to believe Jesus died for you. And Catholic is all about the action. You have to go to church, make the sign of the cross, say the rosary. And if you do enough of those things, enough of the time, you'll go to heaven. You don't ever have to believe Jesus is your personal savior. It would be nice, but it's not necessary. It's better that you act like a Catholic. That's how to be a Catholic. Whereas with a Christian, you can go through all the motions till you're blue in the face. If you don't believe it, you're not really a Christian, and you're not going to heaven. You're not saved, as they say. So, by the way, neither of those two options appeals to me. I'm not going to act a certain way that I don't believe. It's just, I just believe it's a bunch of actions that are useless. They're just repetitive, mind-numbing actions. It's a cult. It's a cult-like way of getting people to behave. Like saying 35 rosaries in a row, which I've done in my lifetime, novenas and stuff like that. It's just chanting. It's like Buddhist chanting. It's meant to numb your brain, and it's meant to get you not to think. So, religion has been a very, very humongous part of my life, and in a very negative way. Everyone in my family has, so my specific family, of course, is my parents and my sister. And my sister is an atheist, but I shouldn't really discuss her personal religious views. However, she is much more spiritual now than she's ever been in her life. I do believe that she has a higher power. I know she prays. I know it's definitely as a result of 12-step program. And I have a major problem with the 12-step program. That's actually why I quit it. Adult children of alcoholics, because I really cannot handle the religious aspects of it. I don't have a higher power. I don't want a higher power. It's not necessary in my life to be the person who I am. Interestingly, no, I don't have it. I must have taken it down. I had a little poster up around at my old apartment that said, what, WWJD, which is those stupid bracelets that sometimes they wear, what would Jesus do, to remind people to behave in a Christian way. Mine was, what would Joe do? I just try and remind, what would the better part of me do in any given situation? Because I'm a really good person. I've got good ethics and morals, and I think 99% of the time I behave correctly. You know, I do the right thing. I do the right thing for the right reasons. And sometimes if I'm tempted to do the wrong thing, I have to just remember, what would Joe do? And typically the things that I am, the times that I've made stupid choices in my life, 99% of the time involved a boy or a guy. And yeah, I was usually like kind of following my hormones. So, you know, it's kind of a no-brainer. What would Joe do? The part of me that is not influenced by sexuality, I guess, or hormones or whatever. So my mother is a hyper dogmatic religion. We religious. We argue religion constantly. It's a big bone of contention between the two of us. On the bright side, she's very, very accepting and understanding of my atheism. Doesn't stop her from praying for me and this kind of crap, but we're kind of at an impasse about it. And the fact that we can joke about it and that we can argue about it as we do is great, because there was no humor in it. And years gone by, it was very serious business. And nowadays, it is, you know, she likes to be challenged. Honestly, she always. And I had another Christian friend who said the same thing. They liked the fact that I challenged them. Now, the problem is that when you start arguing Christianity from like a logical point of view, it's an illogical religion. So the atheist is always going to win these arguments. You know, arguments, but the trump card or whatever that the Christian always plays is, well, it's faith, and it makes me feel better, and that's not how I operate. I don't operate by feeling better by telling myself lies. That's not, if that were true, I could have just talked myself into being a girl and behaving like a girl, just like Catholics behave like Catholics, and life would have been hunky-dory, and I would have gone to heaven. But the fact is, I'm not a girl, and I don't want to have to lie to myself or society. I don't want to have, Stanley's here. I'd prefer to be true to myself, and I prefer logic to rule the day. And, having sometimes concrete answers or words for things that I never used to know. For instance, the word genderqueer is been a lifesaver for me, because it defined something I needed defined in my life. So many things that needed defining in my life were always thrown over to, it's God's will, or it's just the way it is, or Jesus, that's because, like so many scientific stupidities were just, oh, that's, Jesus said it was so, or the Bible said it was so, and science proved it to be wrong. So, I don't want to feel better about things by saying God willed it. That doesn't fly with me, and it doesn't make me feel better at all. It's the old Santa myth. I don't feel better thinking that there's a Santa out there that gives, lots of expensive presents to rich kids and nothing to poor kids. Never mind the Muslim kids who don't celebrate. Santa fucks them right over. So, I don't choose to believe in fairy tales. As regards to my gender and the negative, I really could go on and on and on about this. I have some Christian colleagues that I don't really get along with. We're civil to one another, but like for instance, two of them, they're brothers, they're married, and the one just had his 5th child. He's been married about 6 years, and they have 5 kids, and the baby was born yesterday, but he never told anybody. He doesn't talk to anybody at work about his personal life, which I find very strange. Like, to me, you don't talk about the things just because I'm such an extrovert, to me, you don't talk about the things you're ashamed of. I forget that sometimes people are very private, and he's one of them. But, for example, he doesn't talk about the size of his family. I think because he knows he gets mocked, and he has a stay-at-home wife, and people my age, he's actually quite a bit younger than me, I think he's 35, a 30-something-year-old stay-at-home mom of 5 is an object of ridicule in our society, and not too many people, want to be ridiculed for their religious beliefs, and especially when your religious beliefs permeate the whole portion of your life. For instance, you're an educated person who wants to take your husband's last name, abide by the patriarchies, have lots of babies because that's what the Bible tells you to do. And, they don't want to be judged on that. And so, people like that, obviously, it's the women who are having the babies. It's the women who are staying home and being like the biblical defined mothers. There's very, very harsh definitions for what women and men should be, that the Bible prescribes. Now, again, I'm only talking Christianity. I know there's a million other religions out there that have equally defined duties for men and women. And being genderqueer, there's nobody like me in the Bible, and there's nobody like me in the Quran and the Torah, and so I'm not represented in those religions. And because they're such binary religions, there's a God and a devil and a heaven and a hell and a man and a woman, and there's no gray area in a lot of those religions. So I don't fit into them. Now, I should link to, if I can find the link, I'll put it. His name was Matthew Vine, or Matthew Vines. Maybe I'll just tell you quickly. Because he was is a very devout Christian who did a 1-hour YouTube video. Let me just find his name. Explaining how he thinks that homosexuality is not dissed in the Bible. It's called MatthewVines.com. MatthewVines.com. The Gay Debate, the Bible and Homosexuality. He's a young gay evangelical Christian who spent like a year or two going through the Bible and figuring out each portion of the Bible. Like, I think there's 6 passages that pertain to homosexuality. One of them, the biggest one, is the man shall not lay down with man as with woman. It is an abomination in the eyes of God. That one in particular, I remember, it was a very interesting argument he made. He said that that particular line in the Bible falls between, like, the shall not eat shellfish and shall not wear, like, mixed fiber clothing. So if you're wearing polycotton blends and you're eating shrimp, then you're just as big a sinner as a gay person. But what he said was that these were rules that were set out to define the Israelites, to separate the Israelites from the Pharisees or whatever, the other people who lived in that area at that time, that Jews and or Israelites had to behave and look a certain way. Circumcision was another part of it. And they were almost like a codified, defined rule to live by. That was like a secular law. It wasn't a religious law. He does a much better job of explaining it than I would. But I will say that it's worth watching if you've got an hour of your time, just to even get an idea of how crazy Christians can be, how homophobic Christians can be, and how this poor kid, like I said, spent a year or two of his life just trying to argue these points with Christians. And the church that he's speaking at isn't even his own church, because his own church will have nothing to do with him. It's too evangelical and too homophobic. He had to go to like those church in the Christian diaspora or whatever it's called. There's like segments of Christianity that are tolerant of homosexuality, and to me, that's like proof positive. There's something fucking wrong with that religion when you have to have a segment that's tolerant of you. I'm sorry, but religion that tolerates me, the Catholics barely tolerate women as it is. Yeah, I don't need a religion like that in my life. I really don't. Okay, you'll notice I've gone on and on and on, and I will, and I do. Religion is a big sore point with me. It's a huge reason I'm atheist is my gender. My gender is a huge part of how I lost the religion. I'm at 13 minutes. I should probably wind this up, but I will say, if you haven't watched my previous videos, the main reason that I lost my religion was the way that that birth control is disallowed in the Catholic Church, and that all women are destined to be mothers, whether they want to be or not. You gotta remember, because consensual sex is out of the equation too. So you're going to be having sex with your husband, whether you want to or not, and you're not allowed to use birth control. So you're going to be having babies, whether you want to or not. And to me, that's criminal. That's just, I never wanted children, and I never wanted to be forced to have children. And I think you shouldn't have children if you don't want children. I think that an unwanted child is a terrible thing. And that religion made my mother feel. My mother had her tubes tied after I was born, and to this day she believes she's going to hell because she committed a mortal sin. In light of the fact that she was having some mental health issues after I was born, 2 babies in diapers. She didn't think she could have a third in short order, as the church was prescribing. The church was telling her she had to have as many as God would give her in the order God gave them to her. She had her tubes tied. And when I found that out, I was 18, and my mother and I had a long sobbing, screaming match about it, because I remember crying. It was very, very dramatic and traumatic to learn that God wanted my mother to fry in hell for making a choice that every single woman on this planet has to make at some point or another. And yet my father kind of got off scot-free. So yeah, gender, religion, very closely entwined, very much the reason I'm an atheist. And I'm a happy atheist. I'm not an atheist so much because I hate the church, because I'm 40 years old. I have spent many years, I would say the last 20 years, kind of seeking out new religions, and they are all the same. Christianity happens to be the one that I was raised in. It happens to be the one that sort of scarred me the most, or Catholicism, but they're all, they all have gender lines and gender differentiations, and none of that appeals to me on any level. I prefer this life. I prefer the logical life. I prefer linear thinking. I prefer science. Okay, catch you guys next week. Bye bye.